Alright, here's the Morro Bay Regatta briefing. Um, so a couple things you want to know about this venue or notice. Uh, you have this really deep channel here, a lot of current flowing through. There's actually a breakwater off of this rock. Okay, so there's our breakwater. And then we have the channel, right? This is where all the boats come in. I don't know if I got red or green on the right side. I'm looking at it from above, but so this is where all the fishing boats, all the normal commercial and recreational traffic goes in, and it's the deepest part of the marina. And you can kind of see how it naturally would end up that way, right? Just over time, as the current flows in and out, we get a really deep channel that feeds through this narrow opening here. It's really deep, a lot of current in this area. Okay. So we want to kind of think about all of this and see if we can figure out how the water moves. Okay, how do you think the water moves in this situation? And we should have a pretty good understanding or be able to come up with a good idea because this is what we're used to, right? Okay, so we've got Santa Barbara Harbor that almost became a beach the whole way across. There were 30-foot sailboats getting stuck in the mud that aren't even deep in the middle of the deepest part of the channel. But the point is that there's super, super, super shallow stuff. It's super shallow off of Sandspit and in this area, right? It's really, really shallow. Okay, and then it's shallow over here. It really shallow up here, and then it gradually gets a little deeper out here. Okay, and then right here we have the deepest part. Okay, the deepest part of the whole channel is right here. And it actually, at the edge of Sandspit right here, at the edge of Sandspit we get a really steep drop off. So it goes from almost a beach to straight vertically down, right? And really deep, really suddenly, really fast. So the end result is that we get a ton of current that just sweeps through this channel, okay, all through here. The other days when we were going through it, in a couple of the storms, there were whirlpools in the middle of this area and whirlpools over here, just because so much water is moving around and ripping around. So our Opti kids have sailed through this many times, and you guys should be getting an understanding of how the current moves and what your tactics and what your strategy should be through this scenario, tacking around this peninsula, right, on the way in every day. Very many times I've seen the lead change as we sail through here, right? You guys are all tacking upwind into this, coming in at different angles. Some people come in over here, right, low, and some people come in over here high. And so you go from no current or light current out here to suddenly at some point you sail into a river, right? It could be going in or out, and it's spinning around the spit. So sometimes it's going one way here and then whirlpooling and spitting out the other way here. So connecting the water patches is more important than connecting puffs or wind shifts in this type of scenario. So I'm sure some of you guys have some memories of passing people or being passed in this scenario with the current, not because of a wind shift, but because of the current, right? And when that much current will make it feel like there's a wind shift because your apparent wind angle changes, right? So we got to talk about that. So now back at the Morro Bay venue, we've got a lot of the same issues to deal with, okay? So we have current going in and current going out at different times of the day. So this is a venue where you're going to want to know the tides, you're going to want to look at the tide chart, you're going to want to look up the ebb and flow, right? And this is things that you want to look at in San Francisco Bay as well. So I think maybe the Team Trials group, we might go take a look at the Bay model and the currents and see if that helps us get an understanding of the race course out there. But looking at it from this perspective and trying to figure out how the current flows through this area is very important and can help a lot, okay? So deepest water has the most current, right? Especially when there's a channel that's been carved through like weathering and erosion over time. It gets deeper, and that's where the water is going to naturally fill through, okay? So when we have the tide coming in, which is in this regatta usually the case, is what I remember, with the current being a main factor when the tide's coming in. It seems to not go out quite as fast as it comes in, We'll keep an eye on that this weekend and see if that's actually the case. But I have a lot of memories of current sweeping in really fast, really powerful, and a lot of it through this channel. Okay? I see this a lot. Okay? Okay, so here's what happens in the flood tide. We get a ton of current ripping right through here, especially in here. So if you're trying to sail out to the venue at this point and it's really flooding hard, you're like gonna need a tow just to get to the starting lane, right? So what the current does, what's it doing in these areas, right? Okay, so we want to know what's the current doing in this area over here, right? What's it doing in this area over here? We know it's ripping through this channel super fast, but this is where the race course is, right? It starts over here. Over here, it's good to know, just so that you have a complete picture of what's going on over here as well. You won't really get there on the race course. So what we typically see is some kind of eddy effect, right? Where the water can't all just move this way. That's not a natural flow, right? That wouldn't make any sense. It would have to circulate in some way, if you think about it, just the way naturally water flows in this type of situation. Okay, so what we actually get is something more along the lines of this. Okay, so this is, yeah, that's what normally what you're going to see when in the flood tide is you're going to see this circulating eddy that spins through this corner of the marina, right? So this flat current coming through here is going to have to go somewhere, and it's going to end up spinning off in this direction. Okay, and so around here it's probably doing something like that. Okay, and there's a bit of a whirlpool kind of effect going on here. And over here against these rocks, you get this really strong reverse current. It's kind of shooting out, and then it's just getting sucked back and going in. Because that much water can't flood in all at one time and like leave a vacuum of no action over here. So the normal natural effect is this eddy whirlpool current. Okay? So doing something kind of like this and circulating through here. It's all super interesting because our race course is located right here, right in this little corner of the bay where we're out of the way of the traffic, we're out of the way of all the boats going in and out, right? Because it's too crazy for us softies out in the ocean here. The ocean's actually pretty crazy at this venue. This weekend, the weather's looking like it's going to be pretty crazy, so it should be really interesting. We're probably happy we're not going in the ocean this weekend, maybe. It's a bit of a workout for the SoCal Opti fleet. Sometimes if there's a ton of current out there too and the wind's light, we'll just get ripped all over the ocean, and the water I think is deep. So I don't know what's up with the tradition of always hanging out in Chaos Corner at the Big Rock Regatta over here and dealing with the craziest race course you've ever seen. Because when the current's flooding through here, what do you get? Okay, you get this kind of pattern, right? So what you usually see is you'll see boats on the starting line and the flood current. What's going to happen to them? Okay, so it's pretty obvious, right? Let's say this guy here is going to go out and win the pin and head over to the left side of the course. Okay, this guy's going to follow him, do the same thing, and these two, this guy over early guy's going out right. Okay, this guy's chasing him. Okay, so this guy's going to tack back for clear air, okay, because this guy was covering him a little bit, and this guy is going to think, oh, I was getting too far over to the side of the course, and it's getting risky, so I'm going to be conservative and tack back towards the middle, right? So this guy heads out this way, this guy stays further over here. Okay, and so then we get this guy banging the right corner really hard. This guy's cruising back to the middle. Okay, this guy takes the gain of this current and he's cruising back to the middle too. So he's crossing this guy by just a little bit because this guy had adverse current pushing in this direction, pushing him down as he sailed over here, and this guy was getting rocketed towards the weather mark, right? Okay, so this guy's doing good, making tons of progress over here in this direction. We're gonna say this guy goes all the way to ley line, okay? And so does this guy. This guy ducks him. He goes good 3 boat lengths behind that guy, and he sends it all the way to this corner, right? So by that time, this guy's already made it to the mark pretty much. Just rode the current the whole way. And what we're going to end up seeing is that this guy here is going to come back and end up crossing the guy who he ducked earlier, who went out into the wrong current, right? Okay, this guy's going to come back and he's going to be well behind this guy who's done a better job of sticking in the better current. Okay, so there's a pass there by this guy going left and this guy going right and sailing into the river. Then we got this guy over here. So what happens to this guy who just bangs the right corner and sends it all the way to ley line from the start, right? So, well, he ends up here, right? He ends up in this little channel there. He ends up pretty much in the river. Okay. And I've seen this at this regatta. I've seen races canceled because too many boats go right and get stuck in this river. And pretty much this guy, we're going to see him back at the yacht club. Okay. He's just done for. Okay. So this whole regatta is going to be all about playing this little current game. What happens when the current starts to go the other way? Okay. Because the current should be switching back and forth over like a 6-hour period. So for the most part, you're going to be in the same current state all day long. We'll have to look it up and figure out what it's actually going to be. So you can look it up online and you can research it, but the best thing to do is to make the observations when you're out on the water and tune yourself in to what's actually going on with real life, real-time observations, putting the sunscreen in the water at the mark, essentially, and measuring it for yourself. Also, doing the research beforehand and having the big picture understanding of the tides and the times and when they're switching back and forth will help you to predict the changes in the current as we go along. So does it surprise you that when the current starts to flood out of this harbor, you're going to get the reverse eddy effect? Okay, and instead of the current pushing you towards the mark along the breakwater here, it's going to be pushing you towards the beach. Okay, and then we'll get some of this action. But for the most part, I think we get a lot of this. Okay, which is why I think the eddy in the ebb tide is not as great as in the flood tide. I think in the flood tide, it really spins it around backwards, but in the ebb tide, when the current's going out, it does the same thing. It does a little spin, but I think it's not as dramatic, and it seems like whenever it ebbs, it seems like everything happens a little bit slower. Like the flood is really dramatic here, and the ebb kind of seems to be a little mellower. Maybe those observations are biased by the certain conditions, and all the time I've been there, maybe the ebb can be just as strong as dramatic as a flood at sometimes. Just try to put some pieces together here off of just a really quick little research. I pulled this up off of Google in half a second. So here's Saturday, the first day of our regatta. It's at 12:41 a.m. We have a 5-foot high tide, right? So that's at midnight, 41 minutes after midnight, 5-foot high tide. Sunrise is at 6:15. At 7:30, at 7:40, so around 8 o'clock, the tide's going to be at its lowest point, okay? And then at that point, the tide will be pretty slack, pretty mellow, not much current will be seen. And then from 7:30 to 1:30, that's when the flood's going to start, okay? So the flood's going to be going probably until 2 o'clock, and like around 2 o'clock, we'll see slack current or no current at all, right? And then everything will be pretty still for a while. And then at 6 p.m., at 7 p.m., that's the low tide again. So by 7 p.m., we should have gone through the ebb cycle and the ebb cycle should be wrapping up. I think a little bit after 7. I think the tide cycles will